Hello, Amun token holders, crypto enthusiasts, and all the maximalists out there. It's Korean and I am back with the second episode of the Inside Crypto podcast. Today we dive into the top 4 tokens that make up DFI. These include Chainlink, Uniswap, Aave, and Sushiswap. This episode was recorded on August 6, 2021. Today we interview one of the newest members of our research team, Zoe. Coming from a diverse background, she fills us in on what these 4 tokens are and what we can expect from them in the future. Lastly, we will round out everything with some news about the Smart Contract Conference, Binance regulations, per protocol, and DYDX. Thanks everyone for listening, and don't forget to follow us on social media. Tune in next week where we interview another member of the wonderful team here at Amon, getting insights into the crazy, amazing, and interesting world of crypto. Hi everyone, it's Thursday night here in Taiwan. Well, actually not Thursday night, it's actually Friday because we didn't record yesterday. But anyway, we are back with another Inside Crypto podcast. Today I feel very lucky to be joined by a new member, relatively new member of our research team, Zoe. Thanks for taking the time to be here. Today, we are going to go under the hood of the DFI token. If you didn't listen to the podcast last week, you should go back and listen to it. But if you can't, I forgive you. At least you are here for episode 2. DFI is one of the tokens we offer here at Amun. It is comprised of the top 8 DeFi tokens in the Ethereum ecosystem. What those tokens are, I will let Zoe get into it. But before we do, Zoe, why don't you introduce yourself?
Thanks for having me, Krian. So my name is Zoe. I just started research at Amun. I kind of have an unconventional entry into DeFi. I basically started my career as an airline pilot. And when COVID hit last year, I had a lot of spare time and I started getting into crypto and I started getting into DeFi and basically went down this deep, dark rabbit hole. And that's how I ended up here today. It's been a crazy journey. Things happen so fast in DeFi. Even if you let it slip for a day, you kind of left behind. So it's a really exciting time to be in this space at the moment.
Great. I mean, that's such an interesting story. But time to get down to business. Let's mix it up. So if you go to the Amun website, people who are watching on YouTube later, or you're listening to the podcast, you can go to Amun, click on strategies, click on DFI, and you can see the 8 tokens. Today, we are originally going to have Eli and Zoe on together, but Ellie couldn't make it. Sorry, I mispronounced his name. But we still got Zoe though, which is more than enough. Hopefully we can get Ellie next week to finish the discussion on the other 4 tokens. So going back to the point, Zoe is going to give her take on each component with a little bit of time for discussion. So Zoe, we are off to the races. For average people, Chainlink sounds like part of a fence around someone's house. Why don't you fill us in on why that is totally not the case?
So yeah, on a really simple one-liner, Chainlink is a decentralized Oracle network that supplies real-world data to smart contracts on the blockchain.
Okay, and you mentioned Oracle Network. Do you want to tell our average listeners, people who don't know what is an Oracle Network, what it actually is?
Yeah, sure. So basically, smart contracts need to get data from the real world. So this could be the price of crypto assets, it could be the weather, it could be any kind of data. But in order for that data to be brought on chain, you need a blockchain middleware. And that's where an oracle comes in. The oracle essentially obtains this data from the outside world and puts it through into the smart contract on the blockchain. And in the context of the Oracle network, there's more than one. So there's multiple in a decentralized network so that the information can come through without having to rely on one single node.
My other question I had is, why is Chainlink so unique in the ecosystem? Why is Chainlink number 1?
Well, I think they are currently the number 1 provider. They have a lot of integrations. Their Chainlink price feed data is probably the most highly used. I think they have something like 600 partner and integrations to other DeFi projects. And it's unique in its way because it's very secure, it's very reliable, and it's able to prioritize oracles based on their historical trustworthiness.
And, Chainlink's been in the news. They had the Smart Contract Summit that you were part of. My last question about our number 1 token, part of the DFI index, is where do you see Chainlink going in the future? Do you see other competitors developing, catching up to Chainlink maybe?
Yeah, there are definitely other competitors in the space. There's a Band Protocol. There's also API 3. But they are in the race of for providing oracles, they're much further behind. I think Band Protocol has something like 35 integrations. So they do have a lot of catching up to do. But I think it's good, healthy competition for more oracles to be in this space. And yeah, for the future, they have a lot of new projects coming up. They just released a keeper at the SmartCon yesterday, and they also recently acquired Deco, which will help them move forward in their roadmap. And they're also working on building a hybrid smart contract. So they are constantly innovating, and they have a lot of exciting new things coming up.
Fantastic. That is Chainlink, the first token that is part of DeFi. We're going to move on to number two. Number two is Uniswap. Zoe, why don't you fill us in on what Uniswap is?
Yeah, Uniswap is probably one of the biggest, or it is the biggest DEX or decentralized exchange available on the Ethereum network. And its combined trading volume is, I think, approaching 140 billion, I think, at its peak in May when it was operating. And that is that is like massive. I think it accounts for over, I think, 54% of the trading volume on the Ethereum network. So what it is it's an automated market maker. It provides a place for people to exchange their tokens. And what it does is it allows people to provide liquidity. And through that liquidity, people can exchange their tokens. Yeah, they're just a provider of that service for the Ethereum network.
Would you say Uniswap is definitely more popular than Chainlink, or it's like more people have heard about it? And if so, why is that?
I think Uniswap is perhaps much more obvious on the user interface level. Like, for example, if you were to exchange your tokens on the Ethereum network, you would go to the Uniswap protocol, whereas Chainlink is more of like a service provider, and they provide their service through different APIs and different protocols. So that might not be as obvious to the user interface.
Talking more about Uniswap, we're going to talk about something later, the competitor Sushiswap. Why is Uniswap number one in the space? Were they just first to get this done, or is there a reason that they're number one?
I mean, they've definitely been around for quite a long time, especially in the DeFi space. I think they started in 2018, and their initial seed launch after DEFCON 4, I believe, started with just 3 tokens. That was what Uniswap V1 was based on. And since then, it's made various iterations, Uniswap V2, which is their source of, or when they started the liquidity pools, and most recently Uniswap V3, where they do concentrated liquidity on the price curve. And I think their ability to innovate and the ability to develop at a really fast-moving pace to keep up with what the network needs puts them as, a leader in the space.
Couldn't agree more. I gotta go to the regular user question here. For regular people getting into crypto, why should they be using Uniswap, or why is Uniswap important?
Uniswap is a key decentralized exchange. If you want to obtain a certain ERC20 token, that would be the key place to get it on Ethereum. Especially with V3 coming up, it's a much more capital efficient way of trading and obtaining the tokens or assets you require. Obviously, they have different competitors in this space, and there are also lots of DEXs that provide this kind of service. But I would say the majority of tokens and protocols launch their projects on Uniswap. So they're definitely most likely to hold the ERC token that you're looking for.
So you mentioned V3 is launching soon, V3 version 3.
Oh yeah, V3 already launched. Yeah, a couple months ago. Yeah, it's already been launched.
What is the advantage of V3? I mean, why did Uniswap come up with this?
So if you imagine liquidity pools changing and market makers inside the liquidity pool, you basically have a really inefficient price curve on V2, where, how would I put this in layman's terms? It basically concentrates like the price curve and makes your capital more efficient in terms of a trading perspective.
That is layman. Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, Uniswap. Wonderful. Number 2. We're going to move on to number 3. That's part of the DFI ecosystem or DFI token. Number 2 is going to be Aave.
Aave is a liquidity provider on a very high level. They're probably like the highest TVL protocol in DeFi at the moment. I think at its peak, it closed something like $20 billion. They recently launched on Polygon a few months ago. That was their layer 2 iteration. So it's really seeing a lot more traction in users. On Ethereum, I think they have less users, but higher liquidity. On Polygon, because of the reduced gas fees, they're seeing a lot more users with smaller deposits. But essentially, they're like a lending and borrowing platform where you can lend out your say for your ETH or your Bitcoin, and you get a certain interest rate for depositing it, and you can use it as collateral to borrow a different type of asset, and basically adds to the lending and borrow ecosystem in DeFi. They're also really highly, I guess, respected in the DeFi community because they have a governance program where basically any holder of Aave can raise an improvement to the protocol, and this usually gets voted on by the community before it gets realized in the protocol.
You touched on some key points there that I think people have heard about in the DeFi space is the idea of borrowing and lending, removing the middleman being in traditional fi. James keyed me on to this last week. He said TradFi, which was like, oh, of course that makes sense. No one's going to say traditional finance, which is way too long. But basically, when you go to get a loan at a bank, right, you're going to have to fill out paperwork. Maybe you get approved, maybe you don't get approved. If you're living in America, you got to deal with credit scores and that sort of stuff. But in Aave, it's much simple. If you have collateral, you can correct me if I'm wrong, right? You said Bitcoin or Ethereum, you put it in and you are allowed to borrow based off that collateral up to a certain amount. There's no man stamping, say, yes, Korean, you can borrow this money.
Correct. Yeah, that's basically what the entire DeFi ecosystem is all about. It's trustless and it's permissionless. So in a traditional banking or finance terms, you would have a credit score. For example, on a piece of paper, it would be right. For example, Korean, I'm going to let you borrow $100, and this piece of paper says that in 20 days you'll return my $100. But on DeFi and on the blockchain, everything is basically processed through smart contracts. So there is no in 100 days, Korean might not give me $100 back because it's just written on this piece of paper. This piece of paper might mean nothing. Whereas on the blockchain, it's a smart contract. It's just math. It's just physics. And so it basically ensures that the $100 gets returned in a certain amount of time, and that's basically what these smart contracts are. So in a lending and borrowing term, that's what Aave provides as a service, and everything is issued through smart contracts.
I want to touch on something else you mentioned. You mentioned the idea of governance, right? And when people know the word govern or governance, they might not know how does that work on Aave or why governance exists. And even in not just Aave, a bunch of other places have governance in their ecosystems. What's cool about governance? Why is governance a good thing for people using Aave or people who are thinking about using Aave? Why is governance important?
Yeah, I mean, governance is a really hot topic now, and the idea of it is that there is no a centralized kind of authority controlling what happens on these protocols. It's not like a bank where you have like a bunch of C-suite executives deciding how they want to move money around or how they want to carry out their business. On a protocol like Aave, it's kind of democratized where the community decides how the rules are made and how we play the game, right? So they can put forward, for example, what to add or features to add to the system, the rules that the people should play by. That's what really is governance. It's in Aave in that sense anyway. It's like community governance.
Is governance a thing you could foresee other coins, other tokens implementing in the future, or is governance just for DeFi protocols?
I mean, governance is a touchy subject. I mean, how governance plays into a token and how governance plays into protocol requires, I think, a lot of thought. And every time a new launch comes out or a new project comes out, you really want to dig deep into how the governance is managed and where it comes from. Does that answer your question? What was your question?
That's totally it. It's definitely, our podcast is for the experienced people and the average users. And that's just what average people want to know, because people have asked me before, what is governance? What is a DAO? And you've talked about it as well. A final question, just like I asked you with all the other ones, where do you see Aave going in the future? I know you probably know better. I had something about them saying they're doing more institutional stuff. And I don't know if this was them. They were going to launch like a social media platform or something like that.
Yeah, that's totally right. So they recently rebranded their institutional branch from Aave Pro to Aave Arc, and that's supposed to supply institutions with their services. So I believe they're looking at things like banks, but it also extends much beyond that. So the significance of that is to see institutional or traditional financial systems integrate with DeFi and integrate with protocols like Aave. It's really marks a huge shift in and where this space can go. So I believe Aave Arc is in the process, and how it's different from traditional DeFi or DeFi is that they kind of have to abide by more compliance and more regulations, such as like KYC for the customers. So I think that's what they're trying to offer the institutional world. And you're totally right. They're also working on a social media platform that's also in the works. I think Stanley was just talking about it today at SummitCon, but the details of that have yet to be released.
Thanks for filling us in, and thanks for hopefully making sure I wasn't wrong. Okay, we're moving on to the last one, Zoe. Sushiswap. Why don't you tell us what is Sushiswap?
Yeah, so Sushiswap started off as a fork of Uniswap, and it's really changed massively in the last year. It's now the second, I think, highest traded DEX on Ethereum. I think it's close to 16% of the daily trading volume. They're also extremely innovative. They've got Kashi, which is their lending platform. They've got Onsen, which is their liquidity bootstrapping launch platform. And they're just like constantly innovating. And the thing I do love about Sushi is that their token is different from Uni in a sense that it's not just about governance. The fees that are generated from the protocol also goes to their ex-Sushi holders. So that's a great way of seeing how revenues generated can go back to the user base or holders of Sushi.
I heard a story about Sushi before that when they were launching, they did something along the lines to Uniswap and to pull a lot of Uniswap users to Sushiswap. Do you know that story at all?
Yeah, so basically what they did was a vampire attack, which is kind of like a general term that we use in DeFi when a protocol is forked or copied, as you would say, and the funds or liquidity from the first forked protocol gets moved into this new protocol. So that's essentially what Sushi did. They did like a vampire attack on Uniswap when they launched. And they managed to successfully migrate a lot of funds from Uniswap into Sushi. And that's really how they started off.
It's such a cool term, vampire attack. I've never heard it before. I'm so glad you're
kind
on
of like
that.
sucking the blood out of the original victim.
From what I've read on comments, you have more experience than I do. Some people say, Sushiswap, the people behind them suck because of that. That was not good.
Mm-hmm.
Some people say that's just business. They did it in a smart way. And now look at Sushiswap. Sushiswap's, doing really well. What's the general opinion about Sushiswap? Are they good people, bad people? Does it matter?
I mean, I think they're probably one of the most undervalued DEXs on the market at the moment. They've come so much. They've come like through so much in the last year since their original like vampire attack on Uniswap. I mean, they've developed so much. The team is a really strong team of developers, and they're constantly innovating. They've been deployed on multiple networks. They're on Polygon. They're on Phantom. They're on Moonbeam. They're not just a copy of Uniswap anymore. They've really evolved into an entity of their own, and they've come a long way for sure.
Because we did talk about Sushi and Uniswap. Is there a difference to using either one? Is it just the services on the side, like you mentioned, the X-Sushi and the lending on both sides? Is there a difference between using either one, or both are the same? Both are okay for people if you want to change from Ethereum to another ERC20 token?
There is a slight difference in fees, I believe. And I mean, it's also serving a different market. Not all the tokens that are available on Sushi are available on Uniswap and vice versa. So it would really also depend on what you're trading, how much liquidity there is in what you're trading, and how much liquidity is available on each particular DEX. So yeah, I would look at both. I mean, it's kind of like going to the market and checking out all the stores and seeing where you can get the best deal, really.
If you're a new person and you're looking, just listen to what Zoe said. You're not like, have a look at both to see what works. Both can get you what you want. Some can get you more, some can get you less. You just have to decide by yourself. All right, so these are the last 4 tokens. Like I said before, another person on the research team, Ellie, is going to be with us next week. I still have to wait for him to tell me the time. Maybe it might even be Zoe next week if Ellie's busy, but these are the 4 tokens. There are 8 tokens, like I mentioned before. So stay tuned for next week's episode, where Zoe or Ellie, or maybe both, who knows, we'll figure it out, will come back and fill us in on the other 8 tokens. Zoe, is there anything you want to round off with about these 4 tokens? Any closing statement, pearl of wisdom?
Not particularly, but I mean, they're all extremely solid protocols in DeFi at the moment, which is why they're part of the DFI token. So I would highly recommend you either following them on Twitter for the latest news on each protocol, or just looking up on how they work and what they do.
Amazing advice. What every crypto show podcast will always tell you: do your own research, right? I'm going to say it now and I'm going to say it again. This is not financial advice. We're giving you information, something to help you learn, something to help you, do your own research and figure things out, and use your money wisely. Okay, so we're on to the best part, my favorite part of the show. The first part was interesting because I learned a lot, more than I expected to learn. And thanks, Zoe, for that. Today, we're going to be talking about some news. The first item is something I have, and then the rest is all Zoe's interesting news items that I have no idea about. So it's going to be more learning for me. So I'm a happy chap. So Zoe, the first thing was, of course, yesterday, Ethereum had their London hard fork. And again, you can correct me in terminology. So now Ethereum has started to burn Ether per transaction. And you can see it on my screen when I captured it. Oh no, this is live actually at the moment. At this very second, if you go to etherchain.org, you can see 4,236.5 ETH has been burned up to now. Oh, 4,237. What does that mean? I'm sure our regular users have heard about Ethereum. Why is Ethereum burning important? What happened to the fork yesterday? What is a fork? Tell us everything.
Sure. So an EIP is an Ethereum improvement protocol, which is basically an improvement to the network and how it works technically. And what the biggest change, I suppose, is the migration of the network from a proof of work to a proof of stake model. And traditionally on the Ethereum network, in order to process your transactions, you have to pay a gas fee. And if lots of people are trying to put transactions through, you basically have to go through, I guess in layman terms, like an auction system. So the highest bidder, or the person who pays the most, gets their transaction carried out the soonest. And the result of this model, in times of high network activity, the gas fees become extremely high, astronomically high, to the point that it doesn't become economical. So what this protocol suggests is to change that fee model to a base fee and a miner tip. So what this means is that you pay a base fee, which eventually gets burned. And on top of that, you pay a miner's tip. This in turn reduces, I wouldn't say it reduces the gas prices, but it evens out kind of periods of high network activity by changing the base fee. So the block size was increased from 12.5 million to 25 million. So every time a block is greater than 50%, the base fee basically changes higher or lower to moderate depending on network activity. So what this does to Ethereum is that it basically burns the base fee. And what this does in effect is make Ethereum a deflationary token. And so over time, the number of Ethereum, tokens available reduces, and theoretically increases its value.
That's literally what I read on the paper. I can't believe you remembered every single point about this explanation. Okay, so that explains a lot.
I hope I didn't get anything wrong there, but that's basically my understanding.
No, I mean, because maybe I'm not the person to confirm this, but for me, that makes sense from a regular user perspective, from a miner's perspective, from somebody who maybe holds Ethereum. It totally makes sense. And you mentioned the key point there, which is what a lot of news articles have mentioned, is theoretically the price of Ether should go up. We're going to have to wait to see if that actually happens. There's something else happening in December that you touched on, which is proof of stake. What's happening in theoretically December, what's going to happen in December with Ethereum? Okay, so I'm going to go into it. So with this new fork, right, of Ethereum, the one that happened yesterday, miners are earning less. So a lot of people, like me included, have changed our rigs and mining farms to move from Ethereum to something else. People have suggested Ravencoin. People have suggested Elrond. I'm doing Ethereum Classic as well. So it's because of the reduced profits in Ethereum, and because the way mining works is you have to perform a calculation or math to reach a certain amount of difficulty in order to get a block, and that block is based on hashes, and Ethereum's is something like 4 trillion hashes, some crazy number like that. So if you're a small time miner, and I count as small, you have to join a pool, and those pools put all your hashing power to solve one block, and all that money gets divided 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, like a lot of ways. So it takes time to earn money. Ethereum is still number one for profitability for miners, but people are worried, which is why I already switched before the hard fork. And it's going to be something interesting to see what's happening in December. So people are worried, can we keep mining until December? When is the time to stop? Also ties in with the burning and stuff, but
Oh, that's really interesting. I think Ellie might be able to help you a lot more. He's a lot more informed about the mining world.
oh, okay. So I'll keep this question for him next time. But
Yeah,
you've
please
done
do.
so well. No worries about it so far. Okay, so from the hard fork, we're gonna move on to the smart contract summit, which started yesterday.
Yeah, so yesterday was day one. Tonight is going to be day two. But yeah, it's got a pretty impressive lineup of speakers from DeFi. The summit is hosted by Chainlink. I've just been listening to the replays of day one now. I highly recommend going in there. But the highlights are people talking about their regulatory landscape in DeFi. Aave came on to talk about their governance and moving on to layer 2 with their governance. They talked about institutional Aave and Aave Arc and their partnerships with different banks and Coinbase, and how they're going to serve these new institutions with compliance and regulatory changes and requirements.
I mean, what was the highlight for you from the stuff you've seen so far?
Wow, it's really hard to kind of narrow it down to just like one highlight, but I think Sheila Warren talked a lot about DeFi and kind of the understanding of politicians and regulators' understanding of what DeFi is. And I guess one big thing was she was asked on a scale of 1 to 10, if you had to put, 1 being like they know completely about nothing about DeFi, and 10 being like really well informed, where would you put the average politician? And her response is she probably knew maybe one person on the entire scale of 1 to 10, and 10 being, someone who's like really spent the time to understand it from a technical perspective and understand the technology behind it, and 1 being just a person who's been fueled by the media and Twitter. And I think that really resonated with me because, I mean, there's just so much happening in DeFi. I think to really understand it, you have to dedicate your time to understand it. And that's really what we need from our regulators and politicians. They really need to be able to understand it before they can make these regulations about DeFi, because it's not similar in any way to traditional finance. So you can't just bring across these regulations and hope that they apply to this completely new space. And we really don't want, regulation to stifle innovation.
That's really interesting, and especially really pertinent to the last few days with the SEC chairman in the States talking about regulation and working with Congress and the things that are being passed in America from Senator Elizabeth Warren and that sort of stuff going on as well. I'm moving on from that and still talking about the Smart Contract Summit. Is there anything you're looking forward to tomorrow or the next day or however long it lasts? Is there any person you're looking to hearing from or any piece of information?
I mean, there's a whole bunch of speakers on the lineup. Like, I really don't want to limit myself to maybe only listening to 1 or 2 people. So I highly recommend you guys checking it out afterwards. I think it'll be available on YouTube.
And this is exactly where I got the trailer from. I got the trailer for this, that all the people who are watching this video right now are going to see it. I got it straight from the Chainlink website, and you get to see the sort of coolness behind it. Okay, moving on to the next story, which is about Binance regulations. I'll read the headline for you. As scrutiny mounts crypto exchange Binance to wind down derivatives in Europe. That's just this headline, but this is been ongoing for a while. Why don't you tell people who don't know about what's happening with Binance and what's going on, and tie it all in?
Sure. So, I mean, Binance is probably the biggest centralized exchange out there. I think it accounts for, 75% or something like that of, the volume of crypto exchanges, and they've been kind of under a lot of regulatory pressure recently. They already don't serve US clients, but a few more countries have joined that list recently, and Malaysia being one of them. And they've also announced recently that they're going to withdraw from their options market. And I think this is not limited to like margin trading, a reduction in margin trading, the removal of futures in all their European markets. And I mean, it's significant because there are a lot of users for this market, and it really goes to show how the regulators are kind of closing in on centralized exchanges. But you're kind of seeing, as a result of that, massive growth in other spaces like Perpetual Protocol, which is a platform where people can trade perpetuals. So basically, futures or option contracts that have no expiry date. Had massive growth this week. I think they went up something like 93%. And then, and then DYDX, which is another protocol that allows you to trade perps, also launched their token. So that's also another exciting thing happening in DeFi at the moment. But yeah, I think as we move forward, it'll be really interesting to see how regulators handle DeFi, and this regulation that Binance is kind of like under right now is kind of scaring some people, and it's also marking kind of like a change, or at least now we're coming significant enough for regulators to take an interest in.
Keeping on the Binance topic, I don't know where in the camp I've noticed in the last probably 5-6 months, it's sort of like two camps of crypto people, users, all the way from regulars to experts, where they're like, regulation is bad, this is not good. And the other camp, which is like, regulation is good, this is going to legitimize the industry. It will help, drive the price up when we become more legitimate and we don't have to worry about regulations hitting the media and price going down. Are there two camps? Are you in any one, or it doesn't matter? What do you think about regulation?
I mean, like, it's inevitable. It's inevitable, and I think it's not so much us against them. I think it's just about moving forward and building DeFi in a way that is, compliant to regulations, but also kind of like educating people about what it is, because what I see in the media and what I see on, say, crypto Twitter most of the time is just that there's just a massive lack of understanding of the technology, and this I think the misconceptions of DeFi is so prevalent that people just need to be educated and understand it. I mean, like I think Elizabeth Warren said that she believes that most people trading crypto are all the shady, kind of dodgy criminal types. But I mean, if you look at the hard facts, I think it's something like 0.54% of crypto transactions are, criminal or illicit activity. So it's more, I think, just like educating the public, educating the politicians, educating the regulators, and just moving forward together from there, as so much as like, it's us against them. But I think it's inevitable. It's going to happen. So it's just really a matter of time.
Just sort of filling out the last few minutes of the podcast, you mentioned Perpetual Protocol. You talked about futures and stuff. Do you want to talk more about what Perpetual Protocol is? It says decentralized perpetual contracts. What is a perpetual contract?
So if you understand like option trading, it's basically a contract between another party to buy, say, a stock or a coin at a certain price at a future date. So
okay,
in the traditional finance, you'd have, say, like a 30-day expiry. In 30 days, I will pay you, $20 for this stock or this asset. And at the end of the 30 days, you can exercise that. In Perpetual Protocol, you're allowed to basically exercise. There's no expiry date on these options, so you can basically hold them for an infinite amount of time as long as you keep paying like their funding fee.
And you mentioned they went up like something like 93%. Why is that?
I think a big part of that is the tightening of future trading on exchanges like Binance. People are seeing that, well, if you can't do it on Binance, you're going to have to be able to do it somewhere else. And Perpetual Protocol is a leader in crypto derivatives in the space. So that's probably some speculation going on there.
Oh, okay. Very interesting. I mean, that makes total sense. I'm like, oh, after I said the question, I'm like, oh yeah, of course. You can't do it on Binance anymore.
Exactly.
Is there anything last you want to add about anything we've talked about today? Anything in the news? Overall, it's August right now. We've got 4 more months. Looking towards the future, I mean, what are you looking forward to this year, crypto wise, DeFi wise? Anything exciting? I mean, like for me, I mentioned the December thing for Ethereum. That's might happen, might be a little bit later, but I'm looking forward to Ethereum moving 100% to proof of stake, and reducing the nagging concerns in the media about emissions and carbon emissions and then the environment and that sort of stuff. So I mean, anything on your side that you're looking forward towards?
I'm excited to see new projects that basically build on existing DeFi projects. So they're calling it basically like DeFi composability, which is like the ability of, I guess, different protocols to interact and build on top of each other. And there's like a lot of innovation going on. So I'm just excited to see like what the developers can come up with and the different kind of applications that will extend inside the DeFi ecosystem.
Wonderful. Yeah, no, that's really cool because I've seen a lot about compatibility recently. And that's something I'm looking forward to as well. Okay, and that is it, Zoe. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you everyone who is listening to the podcast right now. If you're somebody who's watching the video, don't forget to listen to the podcast. And we really appreciate you stopping by. Please don't forget to follow us on social media. It's Twitter at @AmunTokens, AmunTokens, Telegram at @AmunTokens, Reddit at @AmunTokens now. You can also stop by our Discord server as well. You Google Discord and 𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬 and you'll get a link to the Discord server. We have lots of people at 𝕬𝕬𝕬 right now. Zoe and I are in the Asian time zone. Another community manager, David, covers Europe. We have everybody in America. So no matter when you're there, there'll be somebody around who'll be stopping in every now and then to check it out and to see if you have any needs, if you want to talk, you want to chat. We love to talk, we love to chat. So please stop by. We would love to talk to all of you. That is it for us. And thank you, Zoe, one more time for being here. And hopefully we'll get to talk to you again to be on the podcast, talk about something else besides DFI or DeFi or whatever the hell you want to talk about. We will see you sometime in the future.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
No problem. Okay. And everyone, don't forget to tune in next week. So it's either going to be Thursday or Friday for the podcast, somewhere around that time, by the time we get things organized here, with everyone being in different parts of the world. And yep, see everyone next week.